What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another brand new installment of For the Love of Wrestling. I, I of course, am your host, the Renegade of Wrestling, JJ Williams. Happy Monday. Good to see everybody here. Good to see everybody filing in this morning. Hopefully, this is going to be the start to another fantastic week. Got 3 shows to go through today, but they're not the typical 3 shows that we usually cover on a Monday morning. Used to be we would do AEW Rampage, Collision, and SmackDown. But today we have NWA Power, TNA Impact, and SmackDown. And we only have Power just because it took so long for me to watch last week's episode. But we will get back into the standard rotation with that one, where we will be doing Power on Wednesdays, same day I do NXT, now that we no longer have Explosion to have to worry about as well. So we're going to get into Power. Power kicked off this week with Daisy Kill and Talos versus Cronus and Otison. All 4 men have such disdain for each other that the match is declared a double countout. For whatever reason, Father James Mitchell, the Sinister Minister, was aligned with Daisy Kill and Talos. They didn't really give a whole lot of explanation in that one. And no, excuse me. It wasn't Father James Mitchell. It was Aaron Stevens, who was associating himself with Daisy Kill and Talos because Blunt Force Trauma is champions, and I think they were trying to say that he's trying to dominate the tag team division. Honestly, I don't recall. But after the match, Cronus beats Aaron Stevens to the backstage area, where Blunt Force Trauma shows up and attacks Cronus. So it was all kind of like a setup here. I'm sure we're probably going to get Cronus and Odinson versus Blunt Force Trauma here down the road with the way this was built. We then had a promo from the Southern Six. Not a lot to get into here and unpack. We then had Misa Kate versus Taylor Rising, and this match was a banger. If you don't have the CW app, if you don't watch NWA Power, go back and watch the March 12th episode, if nothing else, just for this match. This was arguably one of the best, if not the best, one-on-one women's matches that I've seen since I started watching NWA Power. Misa Kate got the victory here. This was just tremendous. We then had a Tiffany Nieves and Ruthie J promo where they were going back and forth at each other, and then Aaron Stevens interrupted, issued the challenge. We then had a video package from none other than Vampiro. And I'm not going to lie, I popped hardcore for this. I've been a fan of Vampiro going back to the WCW days. And yeah, I know that those weren't exactly the greatest of times for him, but that's where I discovered him. But seeing him in WCW, seeing him in TNA, seeing him here, it just popped me to see Vampiro still working. And it looked like he had a protege. You didn't get a whole lot in depth about him, but it almost looks like it's going to be a Steen Darby Allin type of dichotomy between these two men. So it's going to be interesting to see how this unravels going forward. We had Casey Kazana versus Anthony Andrews, and this was just a meh match. If I'm being 100%, I just wasn't impressed. Anthony Andrews got the win and then decides to beat Casey Kazana down post-match. Then his father, Joe Kazana, gets in, tries to get some separation, ends up getting beat down as well. Main event was the Keen Bees and Natalia Markova versus Pretty Empowered. This was another great main event match. The women were just on fire in this episode. All 6 women brought the action, showed up, showed out. Pretty Empowered pick up the win, which means they will get a future women's tag team title shot against the King Bees, who they dropped the belts to a couple weeks ago on Power. All in all, it was a decent episode of NWA Power this week. That Anthony Andrews, Casey Kazana match really just kind of brought it down some. I would say 7 out of 10. I feel that's respectable because the 2 women's matches, again, just stole the show. Highly recommend going to the CW app, looking up the March 12th episode of NWA Power, watching those 2 matches, if nothing else, especially if you're a fan of women's wrestling. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we'll come back, we'll be taking a look at TNA Impact for last week. Don't go anywhere.
And now, preview time. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
And we are back. Good to see King Mike in the chat room. Yeah, I agree. Vampiro doesn't get enough love. Last pro wrestling tour this year, that's going to suck if he's getting close to hanging it up. But again, I just popped big time when I saw him on my screen. So now we get to TNA Impact, and the show kicked off with a rematch for the X Division title, Chris Sabin versus Mustafa Ali. Good match to kick off Impact. Sadly for Sabin, he is not able to reclaim the X Division championship. In Ali, we trust. I'm so glad Mustafa Ali is getting the opportunity to truly show what he can do after just being brutally buried by WWE. The X Division is the perfect place for him to show off his abilities and skills, and guys like Chris Sabin are the perfect opponents for him. This is so good. We then had Gia Miller backstage, and she interviews Nick Nemeth and Speedball Mountain. Nick Nemeth, of course, the artist formerly known as Dolph Ziggler. Great promo here to set up their match later on in the evening. We then had a Josh Alexander in-ring promo. And he talks about Hammerstone, and he issues a challenge. But Alpha Bravo and Oleg Prudis, Vladimir Kozlov, come out and say that, and they set the walking weapon up for an ambush by Dirty Dango. Alexander makes short work of Dango, and Santino Marella, the director of authority, that son of a gun, comes out and makes a match between Alexander and Oleg Prudis. The walking weapon makes short work of Prudis here, makes him tap out. Honestly, this was just kind of a mess segment to me. I thought it could have been so much better, but it also could have been a lot worse. We then had Crazy Steve cut a promo, but he's interrupted by PCO. Looks like we're going to set up a program here, possibly for the Digital Media Championship. Not really sure where it's going to go, but I love me some PCO. So I'm curious to see what happens here. We then had Ace Austin versus Frankie Kazarian. Fantastic match between the youngster and the seasoned vet here. And it's weird to call Ace Austin a youngster because he's been around for a minute. But in comparison to Frankie Kazarian, like, he may as well be a rookie. And I say that with no disrespect intended. Kaz locks in the chicken wing for the victory. Post-match, Kazarian attacks Ace Austin and Chris Bay. Excuse me. Eric Young ends up hitting the ring, driving Kaz off. Again, solid work here by all four men. We definitely see that Kazarian and Eric Young are not over. Ace Young did a good job to make Kaz look even more vicious than he already has been. We then had a vignette of the system. Solid, but I still don't trust the system. We then had a time machine interview with Gia Miller, and the grizzled young veterans interrupt. Can't get enough of the grizzled young vets on my TV screen. TNA, keep it up. We then had AJ Francis versus Joe Hendry. And if I'm being honest, this was just a meh match. I wasn't feeling it. Rich Swann ran in, attacked Joe Hendry, turned heel, allowed AJ Francis to get the victory. I have seen better from I've seen better from Joe Hendry. I still don't believe in Joe Hendry, but I've seen better from Joe Hendry. People are saying this is the best match AJ Francis has ever had. That's saying something, considering I'm just like, on this match. But I guess you got to start somewhere. Excuse me one sec. We then had a sound check segment, of course, hosted by Alan Angels. Special guest for this week was Dimeless Dana Brooke, better known as Ash by Elegance. And the entire point of her being on the soundtrack this week is to make a special announcement that next week she will have her third match in TNA. This is so dumb, so hokey. She's doing her job as a heel because I can't stand her. But this is such a blatant carbon copy, cookie cutter, wannabe, timeless Tony Storm that I'm just like, get your own gimmick. This is horrible. We then had Bia Moss and Vanna Black versus Spitfire, the team of Danny Luna and Jody Threat, our new Knockouts Tag Champions. Before the match can begin, MK Ultra's music hits and they come to the ring, as do Decay. For what? I don't know. This is a squash match. To a certain extent, I agree with what our buddy Datilla said on the bodyslam.net review, that Spitfire doesn't need to be facing jobber teams. However, when there's only 3 teams in the Knockouts tag division, you exhaust your matches pretty quickly if they just keep facing each other. So I get the need for an enhancement talent match, but can we at least give these girls like half an opportunity instead of just being a squash? And are there not enough knockouts on the roster where we can maybe come together with a couple more teams? Like, I why not pair Alicia Edwards, Eddie Edwards' wife, who's currently in the system, with Ash by Elegance? At least it's a team. They're both heels. They're both arrogant. I don't know, something. What do you guys think? Should they just get rid of the Knockouts tag titles because they don't have a division? I mean, hell, WWE's got more women's tag teams than TNA does, and they're struggling to find an identity with their women's tag division. I'm just saying. We then had a Tasha Steelz promo. Okay. Main event was Steve Macklin and the Rascals versus Nick Nemeth and Speedball Mountain. This was an awesome main event match. Saw the baby faces get the victory. Post-match, the system ambushes the faces. Pretty cut and dry here. Pretty much what you would expect. All in all, not a horrible episode of TNA, but it definitely could have been better. The squash match, the AJ Francis Joe Hendry match just could have been a lot better. I'm going to give it, I'm going to be generous and give it an 8 out of 10, just because the main event match, the Sabin Ali match, and the Ace Austin Kazarian match were freaking phenomenal. But there was definitely some work to be done here. Going to take another quick commercial break. Show you guys what you can expect every week on Stat Boy Sports Bar, which will be airing tomorrow, 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern. Stay tuned. We will be right back.
And now, preview time. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
You ever wanted to come into a sports bar where the barkeeps know their game? Well, the Jeff Beecham Network Multiverse of Media has got a production just for you. Sit down and relax as the Stat Boy and his partner break down the statistics in all things sports. Whether it's football, basketball, motorsports, baseball, hockey, soccer, professional wrestling, mixed martial arts, boxing, and much, much more. All are welcome. Your barkeeps here keep you up to date and in the know of everything going on in sports, while also having a pleasant conversation about it all. Your host and owner of the bar, Stat Boy Mike. His partner in crime, Dory Lou. And a host of other guests coming in. The food's hot, the seats are warm, the drinks are ice cold, and the sports talk is plentiful. Cassidy 18 Studios presents Stat Boy Sports Bar. Take a bar stool and enjoy the show.
And we are back. That brings us to the meat and potatoes of today's show, Friday SmackDown. And SmackDown kicked off with The Rock. He talked about starting his career in Memphis at Flex Kavana. The Rock has come back home. He begins to perform a rock concert, singing a song about what's going to happen at WrestleMania. And once he's done, he cuts a vicious promo directed towards Cody as well as his mom, breaks out a weight belt that he says he's going to use to whip Cody till he's bloody. Then he will go ringside, hand the belt to Cody's mama, and say, "What can I say except you're welcome?" Dropping a little Moana there, and I was just like, "Oh damn, Rocky, you're on fire here." Good to see you, Emmanuel. Yes, just in time for SmackDown. We then had the Legado del Fantasma versus the LWO to see who was going to advance for a shot in the tag team ladder match at Mania. And if you remember, when I did NXT last week, I talked about how the LWO shouldn't have been in those matches. They need to be focused on trying to get into the ladder match here instead of trying to challenge Braun Breaker and Baron Corbin for the titles at Stand and Deliver. They won that match on NXT, and they took the L here. Now, granted, it was a fantastic match, great tag team action, great seesaw battle here between all four men. But if the LWO was more focused on SmackDown, which is where they're supposed to be, then maybe they would have gotten the victory here over the Legado del Fantasma. I probably would have been upset if they got the victory because I want the Legado to win. I support the Legado over the LWO. But the LWO's focus should be on SmackDown titles, not NXT titles. What does that say if, and I'm just spitballing here, but what does it say if the LWO defeat Braun Breaker and Baron Corbin and they could have been in the ladder match here? Like, I don't know. Maybe they're realizing Joaquin Wilde and Cruz del Toro shouldn't have been called up, but I just don't get the logic here. We then see Damage Control and Bayley arrive at the arena separately ahead of our main event between Bayley and Dakota Kai. We have Kayla Braxton interviewing L.A. Knight. Yeah. This is a fantastic interview here that AJ Styles interrupts, setting up our match at WrestleMania between LA Knight and AJ Styles. Good shit here. We then had Logan Paul go into the office of Nick Aldis, wanting to know what's going to happen for punishment from last week, wanting to know who his opponent is going to be at WrestleMania. And Nick Aldis says he will let him know in due time. We find out later on. We'll get there when we get there. We then see the Bloodline. Jimmy Uso, Solo Sikoa, and Paul Heyman, the wise man, the future Hall of Famer. Congratulations again to Paul Lee. Walking backstage, and Kayla Braxton tries to get an interview, ends up startling Paul Heyman. And Jimmy Uso accepts his brother's challenge to a match at WrestleMania. So in the city of brotherly love, it will be Jey Uso versus Jimmy Uso. As of right now, there's been no special stipulations or anything put in it, but I would not be surprised to see a special guest referee, whether it's baby brother Solo Sikoa, whether it's daddy Rikishi. Something needs to happen to help bring this match to a further boil. We then had Grayson Waller versus Randy Orton, and before the bell can ring, Logan Paul comes out to the ringside area. Routine match here. Orton defeats Waller, but post-match, Theory clips Orton's knee, and Logan gets into Orton's face. This brings out Kevin Owens to come out for the save almost, and he almost eats an RKO as a thank you. However, ends up stunning Theory into an RKO. Nick Aldis then comes out and announces that there will be a triple threat match for the United States Championship at WrestleMania, as both Randy Orton and Kevin Owens challenge Logan Paul for the title. I was more looking forward to see Orton versus Logan one-on-one here, so I'm slightly disappointed in that call, but it should still be a good match. We then had Kayla Braxton catch up with Damage Control for a promo, and Dakota Kai cuts a scathing promo on Bayley. And it's now time for Santos Escobar versus Dragon Lee. This was a decent but short match. Dragon Lee took his eyes off of Santos Escobar, which allowed Escobar to hit the Phantom Driver for the victory. Post-match, Carlito and Rey Mysterio come out to assist Dragon Lee. Mysterio then challenges Santos to a match next week, and I feel like this should be WrestleMania. I feel like Mysterio versus Santos should be a WrestleMania match. Or Legado del Fantasma versus the LWO needs to be a Mania match. Hopefully there's some kind of schmozzy finish here where we can then roll this over into Mania. But I just feel like Santos versus Mysterio is where the money is, and that needs to be, even if it's just the pre-show, the kickoff, it needs to be at Mania. Pop in the chat room. What's going on, Pop? Good to see you. Personally, I thought the Rock segment went way too long, started to seem like the Rock show, just saying. I agree as a lifelong Rocky fan that Rock segments have been running a little bit on the timely side, making it where things need to get cut off. But at the same time, The Rock is back for a limited time. You want to use him as much as you can use him, knowing that post WrestleMania, he's probably going to disappear for a while. As a matter of fact, there's a rumor that he's going to be filming a movie post Mania. So we might get him the Raw or SmackDown after Mania and then not get him for another few months. So I definitely see both sides of the coins. It sucks for some of the other talent like Santos and Dragon Lee to have their match cut short because The Rock runs long, but it's also The Rock. Like, you know what I mean? You don't tell somebody of that magnitude to cut their stuff. You let The Rock be The Rock because they hold the crowd in the palm of their hands in the way that 95% of the current superstars can't. We then had the New Catch Republic, Pete Dunne and Butch, taking on Pretty Deadly, and this was a damn good tag team match. New Catch Republic did beat Pretty Deadly and are going to face the Legado del Fantasma to see which team gets to move on to WrestleMania. It was solid. I probably would have put Pretty Deadly over the New Catch Republic because when we really think about it, which team seems like they would be better suited in a ladder match? Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate are technical masters. They don't seem like the ladder match type. Pretty Deadly, if we're being real, also don't seem like the ladder match type, but they're great at bumping around and selling for opponents. So to have them in the ladder match, taking some bumps, making people look good, that would be a good spot for them, I think. And especially if my theory is going to come to fruition here, and they're going to end up splitting the tag team titles during this match by having two different participants grab a set of tag titles. Main event here was Bayley versus Dakota Kai. Solid match until the DQ finish. Post-match beatdown on Bayley, and Naomi comes out to try to make the save, only to get overpowered by Damage Control. Memphis, Tennessee crowd chanting EST, EST. No Bianca Belair to come out and make the save. No Jade Cargill to come out and make the save. It's been a heavy rumor that we're going to have Bianca, Naomi, and Jade versus Kairi, Asuka, and Dakota at WrestleMania. Would have been a perfect chance to start setting it up, but we didn't do that. Not sure what's going on with that. Personally, I think it would be better to have Bianca and Jade versus the Kabuki Warriors, Naomi versus Dakota. Just me. All in all, SmackDown was a decent show, not a great show. I would again give it an 8 out of 10. What did you guys think? Let me know. Leave your thoughts in the comments. I'm going to take one more quick commercial break. And when we come back, we'll do the shills and we'll get out of here. Stay tuned.
3, 2, 1.
And we are back. So again, that's going to just about wrap things up for today. I want to thank everybody for joining me and tuning in. I want to also thank everybody that's going to watch this on demand. Greatly appreciate all your guys' support. Make sure you guys tune in tomorrow. Stat Boy Sports Bar open every Tuesday, 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern in the afternoon, evening. Moving back to its original time. Make sure you tune in for that and see what the Stat Boy has for the week. I know there's been a lot of moves made in the NFL because of free agency and trade season starting up. So I'm sure Mikey will have a lot of reports on that. And that's going to just about wrap it up. Make sure you tune in tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel for my review of Raw. And until then, thank you guys for joining me and tuning in. And I will see you guys tomorrow.
The Jeff Meacham Network's Multiverse of Media. For over 15 years, the recognized symbol of excellence and the standard bearer in coverage of sports and entertainment.
Thank you, JJ. Appreciate you.